wonderful A-plusers out there. It is I, Stuart, here once again to give you guys another Stargirl review. This time we're going to be talking about Season 2 season finale, which, by the way, guys, was quite an amazing finale in case you guys haven't had a chance to check it out yet. But I really hope you guys have, because there are going to be a lot of spoilers when I talk about this season finale. And there's also going to be an entire portion of this review where I'm going to be talking about what they might have set up going forward, because there is a lot that they set up that could lead to some potentially really interesting storylines going into season 3. But for now, guys, let's definitely take a look at this season finale and talk about everything that works so well about it. Not very many nitpicks. I think I have maybe 2 nitpicks that I wrote down in my notes for this episode, but besides that, this was almost a perfect finale. Really, everything about it I think worked very well. From the very beginning, where you have Beth's parents now being trapped under Eclipso's mind game, so therefore they're seeing Beth as this bratty little girl who is now really pissed off at both of them and talking about how much she just hates both of her parents, and Beth is like witnessing her parents seeing this and trying to save them, but she can't do anything about it because they're just stuck in this state of mind that, you know, they can't be taken out of. So right there, it really hits you with some dark stuff going into it. Now, this episode definitely doesn't stay dark. I think this whole season really built up to this finale in a lot of ways in terms of tone, and not to mention a lot of story beats that you kind of forgot existed earlier on in the episode, but then they give you a heavy reminder during this season finale. So one of those things being, for example, we got at the very end of 2 episodes ago, we had the whole thing where Eclipso finally was able to break Courtney and get her to just say how much she absolutely hates Eclipso. And we find out that Eclipso took that moment to heart and knew that was what he needed her to say outside of the Shadowlands to finally gain full possession over Courtney. There was also just kind of, when you look back on episode 11 of the season, which again, you know, as a reminder, wasn't really my favorite episode of the season. It kind of makes a lot more sense though when you watch this season finale, because suddenly you kind of realize that maybe Courtney didn't escape the Shadowlands like we originally thought, but it's very possible that Eclipso let her go, especially given what we see with the Shade later on in the episode. So with the Shade, we get Eclipso essentially breaking the barrier between the real world and the Shadowlands. I would keep referring to it as the real world just because, you know, it's like, even though it's not actually the real world, but I don't know, it feels easier to call it the real world than Earth 2, which is where Stargirl takes place on. So I'm just going to be referring to Stargirl's world as the real world as an easy way, so you guys know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about dimensions colliding into each other. I'm referring to the Shadowlands and the real world as in Earth 2. So I feel like I explained that way more than I needed to. After he starts to break open the barriers between the real world and the shadowy dimensions, we get the Shade returning in full power also, so he's able to free Beth's parents. And something I didn't expect was how very fast and accepting Beth's parents were of her being the new Dr. Midnight. And I did really like the moment where Dr. Midnight got to meet her parents for a brief moment and didn't really get to fully introduce himself because it was still going on during this big climactic battle, but he had that brief moment to just tell both of Beth's parents that they should both be extremely proud of their child, which, I mean, I'm sure they both are, but you know, they definitely went into work today not expecting to find out that their daughter was a superhero, that's for sure. I do love what they kind of do with this at the very end, which I think will be set up for season 3. Eclipso, though, you know, let's talk about him throughout this episode, because everyone gets a chance to face off Eclipso. You know, in a lot of ways, this season finale felt very similar to Avengers in a few senses, and one of those being that you got to see almost everyone kind of having a one-on-one with Eclipso. Sometimes it was a 2-on-1 with Eclipso, but regardless, everyone gets a swing at Eclipso, and it's very satisfying because Eclipso has just been such a terrifying villain this whole season. So to finally see everyone getting a chance to just, you know, give him the beating that he deserves, to me, is just extremely satisfying and definitely what we needed to see in this season finale. So you got Courtney and Cindy fighting Eclipso at the same time at one point, and then we even cut back to Mike and Jakeem, both of which are at the JSA headquarters, where unfortunately it looks like the stripe suit is still unable to be repaired. It looks like it's not going to function anytime soon, until they realize that with the Thunderbolt pen, they're able to wish for the engine part, that they don't currently have for the suit, and therefore they're able to make it function perfectly fine once again. Now, one thing I thought was absolutely hilarious about this moment is that you still have the mechanic that, you know, kind of befriended Pat, even though it was definitely a very one-sided friendship. You know, looking back on the series, it's very weird because it feels like most of Pat's friends are very much like, they kind of are the friends that force themselves into his lives rather than him trying to actually meet them and become friends with them naturally. It's really funny. I guess like when you're a pushover, but you're also like a very friendly pushover, it's just, it's easy to make friends even if you don't want to make those friends, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And so we have this mechanic able to fix the Stripes outfit, and so Mike is able to use Stripes, and we get a really cool fight between Stripes and Eclipso. The way they are able to have basically a guy in a costume fight something that's not even there, something that's completely CG, again, really incredible to me. The computer effects in this season, I think they've only really looked bad during the Solomon Grundy episode, and that was really more because of the way that episode was shot, not because like the VFX were badly done or anything like that. I feel like the issue is that Solomon Grundy, the way he was animated, he was meant to be animated during nighttime scenes, so when you see him fighting in this episode against Eclipso, yes, we get Solomon Grundy as well, he looks absolutely fantastic, just like the Stripes outfit. So we get some really cool fight scenes between Stripes and Eclipso. Now, Eclipso we do see how powerful he truly is in this episode because he's able to take down Stripes, Thunderbolt, and eventually Solomon Grundy. In fact, with Solomon Grundy, his blow is a lot more lethal than it is to the others. Like, there's a giant hole in Solomon Grundy's stomach, so seemingly he is now out of commission for the rest of the series, which of course really upsets Rick Tyler, but unfortunately for Rick, he doesn't have the hourglass, so he's kind of the one who really just gets kind of bitch slapped by Eclipso without really being able to make a single dent in him. I mean, I guess he is the one that brought Solomon Grundy into the battle, so in a way, a lot of Solomon Grundy's punches were because of Rick, but unfortunately, Rick isn't able to get any physical licks in without his abilities, so therefore, I feel like he's the only one who really missed the satisfaction of actually being able to physically harm Eclipso the same way Eclipso mentally harmed him in a lot of ways, from, you know, tricking him into beating up his own stepdad slash uncle, whatever, or however you want to label his douchebag of an uncle, I don't know. Eventually, Eclipso is able to take control of Courtney, unfortunately, by using her hatred of him against him. This is something I brought up early on in the episode, how it definitely feels like when you look back at episode 11, like this moment was definitely foreshadowed, of course, and I mean, even in episode 2, of course, we saw a literal foreshadowing of this moment in the previous episode, but in the previous episode it was more like a vision, so we kind of knew it was coming because of that. When you look at episode 11, however, it was very metaphorical in the way he was going to finally use Courtney to destroy all of her friends, and here we see it playing out in a less metaphorical way and more in a physical way when he fully takes control over Courtney by basically using her hatred to finally take control of her and possess her. Now, we also do find out too why it is that he was so obsessed with possessing Courtney specifically, and it's really just because of her having the power of the staff. It could have been the same thing with Green Lantern as well. Like, you would have thought like Jenny would have also been like a perfect ideal host for Eclipso, but with the ring only working with specific people, it could be that the moment that Eclipso actually took control of Jenny, the ring would stop working for him, so that could be why he decided to take over Courtney instead, because then he would have full control over the staff no matter what. Now, with the staff, he now has the power of both light and darkness, which to him means that he's going to be essentially a god of both the real world and the Shadowlands. But this all goes wrong when Starman finally appears at the very end and takes basically a hold of the staff. Now, he doesn't take control over the staff because it still looks like Eclipso has more power over him, but with just simply being able to touch the staff, he's able to reach into Courtney's mind and basically get her to fight back against Eclipso. So with the two of them using the staff together, they're able to push Eclipso out of Courtney's head, and so Eclipso no longer has a host. We get this, again, going back to kind of my Avengers comparison of how like everyone's able to get a good hit or two in on Eclipso. Here we get a scene where every single member of the JSA, and not just the JSA, we even get the ISA, and then we even get Sportsmaster, Tigress, and Artemis making a quick cameo at the very end, which I'll get a little more more into that when I talk about the setups for season 3. So we get all of them essentially surrounding Eclipso, and eventually he's weakened. So now is the perfect time for both Courtney and Jenny to use the power of light to essentially destroy whatever darkness remains of him. So Courtney uses the staff along with Starman essentially using it as well. So you have two people wielding the staff together, and then of course you have Jenny using her ring, and together they're able to finally put an end to Eclipso. But of course, we have to have a little more power on top of that. We have to have Thunderbolt, of course, contributing to this. But of course, with Jakeem being the one to make the wish, rather than saying, Thunderbolt, I wish you would zap Eclipto, he asked Thunderbolt to literally turn him into toast. And, well, obviously he didn't literally say, I wish you would literally turn him into toast. He just said, toast Eclipso or something like that. I wish you would toast Eclipso, which of course causes Eclipso to literally turn into an overburnt piece of toast, which, I mean, was definitely a funny way to end, this villain who I think was probably one of the most terrifying villains, not just in Stargirl, but in just like almost any television show out there. Just seeing his fate ending with him literally being turned into toast, I thought was definitely a very fun and kind of silly way to end the series. So I think everything that we've gotten so far from this big battle was amazing. I think my only two nitpicks that I mentioned that I was going to bring up earlier was definitely that Sportsmaster, Tigress, and Artemis appearing at the very end really, it felt kind of unnecessary. Like if it had happened earlier on in the episode, I wouldn't have minded it so much, but they kind of just show up right after he's already defeated, so they really don't add anything to that final fight. Now, I think they did it really to kind of remind you that these guys are still characters in the show, and remind you what could happen for season 3 with that very end scene that we get, but I'll get into that in just a moment. But first, I feel like the ending scene to this episode that involves them would have actually been better had they not been in this scene. My other nitpick, of course, kind of goes to Solomon Grundy. It really felt like he was just there just to be fridged in order to kind of set up Rick Tyler's character arc going forward into season 3. Now, of course, there is a hint at the very end that he could be coming back, which, of course, is a thing that Solomon Grundy does in the comic books. He never stays dead because he's literally a zombie, so we'll probably see more of him going into season 3, and it's possible that with him being dead and having his brain being rebooted, it's very possible that we could see Solomon Grundy as an antagonist again, and Rick Tyler might be the one who tries to convince him to come back to being a good guy or something like that. Not 100% sure where they're going to go with his storyline, but I am definitely looking forward to it going forward. Now, that all being said, we got to talk about the epilogue, because the epilogue is what really sets up a lot going forward into season 3. So we have Starman now, who is going to seemingly be a series regular going into season 3, and he is seemingly going to be Courtney's new mentor going forward. Now, this could lead to some conflict between him and Pat, because we see just alone in the very end of this episode that Pat wants Courtney to make sure that she doesn't put her regular life as Courtney Whitmore on hold just to become Stargirl, whereas Starman has kind of this idea of, hey, superheroes don't need to go to school. Now, it was played for as a joke, but of course, a lot of times small jokes like that can end up leading to bigger conflicts down the line. So we could see something like this where Courtney might have to choose between mentors before deciding that maybe she doesn't need a mentor anymore overall. We could see something like that going forward into season 3, definitely with Sylvester and Pat butting heads like we kind of saw in some of the flashbacks. We see that Sylvester, while he wants to be a much better person than his parents, there's still a bit of his parents inside of him that he hates to admit still exists, and we might see a little bit of that and see him as not really an antagonist for the season, but definitely an obstacle in the season nonetheless. We also have Cindy wanting to join the JSA, which, she knows won't happen without Yolanda's approval, so she's the first person that Cindy goes to, and I think there's kind of like that mentality of, hey, if I can convince Cindy that I'm sorry, then maybe I can convince Courtney that I'm sorry as well. And that's also like assuming that she actually is sorry. Now, personally, I do think that she wants to become a better person, and that's why she wants to join the JSA, but of course, this is the same person that freed Eclipso this season, So, you know, we'll have to wait and see how that actually works out going forward. We also have another kind of cute setup for season 3 is Beth's parents now being fully on board with her being Dr. Midnight. So this was something I definitely didn't see coming. In fact, I thought if anything, like they might be trying to stop her, like forbid her from being Dr. Midnight, and you know, season 3 was going to be her doing the Dr. Midnight thing behind her parents' back or something along those lines. But no, we do have her officially as Dr. Midnight, and her parents expressing that they're very proud of her for doing so. We even have Dr. Midnight, you know, officially passing the mantle down to her. I mean, it had been kind of alluded to in the previous episode that he accepted her as the new Dr. Midnight, but now he's officially retiring the cowl, so we're never going to see him put on the Dr. Midnight costume again unless it's through flashbacks, or unless he has to come and help the new JSA during like some conflict going into season 3, but it doesn't look very likely. It looks like the reason he is officially leaving is because he has accepted his new responsibilities, which is going to be, you know, being a parent, possibly because he finds out that his wife actually had a kid right before he went missing, and so of course his main goal is to just find his wife and hopefully work his way back into his wife's life, assuming that she'll have him. So a lot of questions with his story. Like, I do hope we come back to Dr. Midnight at some point to find out how everything's working out with him, but you know, you definitely got to imagine that it's not going to be as simple as coming back into your wife's life and being like, hey, I'm still alive, can we get remarried and can I get to know my son? Like, you know, there's definitely going to be some drama there, and I hope they don't leave it out. I hope it doesn't all happen off screen. I hope we actually do get to see more of him going forward in season 3, but if we do see more of him, it won't be as Dr. Midnight, it'll just be as Charles McNider. Beth has officially become the official new Dr. Midnight at the end of the season, so that's going to be really cool to see going forward, and it's going to be interesting to see you know, whether or not her parents are an obstacle or if they actually do end up being very helpful throughout season 3 by trying to be supportive parents, because I could definitely see that storyline going either way. And then the last thing we got to talk about before we talk about the big bad going into season 3 is the little bit of a setup. And again, I still stand by this. I think this last scene could have been a lot funnier if they hadn't shown Sportsmaster, Tigress, and Artemis earlier in the episode. But essentially, we get a knock at the door and we find out that the house that has been for sale next to the Whitmore's house has apparently just been sold, and it's been bought by none other than Sportsmaster and Tigress, meaning that the three of them are actually going to be Courtney's new neighbors going forward into season 3, which I see leading to more comedy than drama than anything else, which I'm all for, because I think the episode that ended up having where you ended up having Sportsmaster and Tigress with Pat Dugan, and Pat had to keep them, you know, from causing any trouble, that to me was probably the funniest episode of season 2. So if we get another episode like that in season 3, I'm all for it, you know, definitely. But you know, it's also going to be kind of interesting because I'm curious if they're going to basically, with Artemis no longer being on the football team, if maybe you're going to have Sportsmaster and Tigress trying to force Courtney to allow Artemis to join the JSA. So that could be extremely hilarious going forward. So we now have like a JSA that isn't perfect. Like, it's not all made of good guys now. We have a JSA where you have 2 members that were originally part of the ISA a part of it. Like, that could be something really funny going forward. Now, of course, we got to talk about the big stinger at the very end, which is the Helix Institution, which of course seems to experiment on people with gifts, specifically young people with metahuman abilities. And we see at the very end, we see Mr. Bones, who is voiced none other by Keith David, a really talented actor, one that I absolutely love from a lot of his voice acting roles. A lot of you guys probably know him as the president from Rick and Morty. One of my favorite roles that he's actually done in recent years, though, of course, has to go to the Mass Effect trilogy, as he plays Captain Anderson, and, you know, probably one of my favorite characters in video games, I gotta say. So now seeing him coming as the main villain, I definitely look forward to seeing how they utilize him during season 3. The visual effects for his face definitely imply that he'll probably be a villain that we don't see a lot of, like in terms of like with his regular form. Like, we might see him take on like a different persona while he's in Blue Valley, therefore, you know, covering up his face. And knowing how the season 2 used the VFX shots very sparingly, I feel like we're going to have a lot more of that going into season 3 with our main villain. But Regardless, guys, I do think that everything that they've really set up for season 3 is going to be quite amazing. And I think had it not been for season 2, I would have been a little worried about it, because it looks like they have a lot going for season 3. But when you stop and you think about what they had going for season 2, which was, again, quite a bit when you think about it, because they had Starman returning, they had Eclipso, they had the ISA, they had the whole backstory on Cameron, and then not to mention some of the pieces they were setting up for season 3, such as Green Lantern's daughter. You really think about it, they had a lot to do in season 2, and they somehow were able to perfectly pace it within their 13 episode run of Stargirl. So with them being able to do this just fine, I really have zero worries going into season 3 of Stargirl, even with everything that they set up. I think that if they were able to pace it perfectly in season 2, I really look forward to seeing how they pace it all in season 3. And I hope personally, I'm really hoping that they stick to 13 to 15 episodes, because again, it means that they don't have to overutilize a lot of the VFX. Therefore, when they use it sparingly like they've been doing, it ends up looking a lot more incredible. And then same with the writing as well. You don't have to worry too much about relying on the Monster of the Week format, because it's when you have a shorter amount of time to when you have a shorter amount of episodes, you can utilize that time to really flesh out villains and main characters. And not saying you can't have filler within that, you can still have those fun filler episodes, like again the episode that they had with Sportsmaster and Tigress from season 2. You can still have episodes like that, but at least when those episodes are coming out, they're not coming out constantly. They're coming out so far in between that you actually kind of look forward to those lighthearted filler episodes. So I really hope the direction that they took with season 1 and 2 in the show is something that they continue to take during season 3, because I think when it comes to tone and pacing, Stargirl has really perfected when to take itself seriously, when to have a little bit of fun. It's really hard to explain, but the pacing in the show is just some of the best that I've seen in not just any superhero show, but just in any show in general. I really hope they can keep this up going into season 3, and I'm pretty sure they will. Like, again, everything we've seen going into season 1 and 2 of the show, I really have nothing but high hopes for season 3 going forward. So overall, guys, this was what I think was a perfect finale for season 2. Did I have a couple of issues with it? Of course, but did these issues distract from the overall bigger picture? Definitely not. I thought this was a great end to what was already a really good season going into this. So of course, guys, as we always say, though, at the end of the day, these are just my A+ opinions. We here at A+ Opinions want to know what you guys think, so definitely let me know your thoughts about the show and its season finale in the comments below, because I definitely want to hear about them. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, but of course, guys, above all, more than anything, just remember to keep it A+. I'll talk to you all later.
Enjoy our content and want to be a part of helping our channel grow? Become a patron supporter. We have affordable tiers to choose from that offer a variety of exclusive and early access content, from audio files for all of our shows for you to enjoy on the road, access to our Discord community, and plenty of reactions, reviews, character breakdowns, and more. Check us out at patreon.com/A+opinions. And as always, remember, like, subscribe, and hit that bell notification so anytime we drop a brand new video, you will be notified.